All right, everyone. So, welcome to a new podcast. I'm here with a special guest, No More Fielders. Welcome to the show.
Heyo, what's up, everybody?
So, I have a quick story to tell because I've never told this story before. Basically, I was eating lunch one day. This is about like a year ago, maybe over a year. I was eating lunch on my couch in my living room, and I was like watching YouTube as I was eating, and I scroll through my recommended and I see this video, and it was the Major League Baseball iceberg, and I was like, oh, that's funny. I think I made an iceberg one time because like back during quarantine, I saw these iceberg videos and I was like, wait, oh, I don't think I've seen a baseball iceberg yet. So I went on icebergcharts.com and I made this iceberg. It took me like an hour, like 2 hours, and I like forgot about it until I saw this video. So I'm like, oh man, that would be funny. But in my head, I was like, there's no chance. There's like no chance that it's gonna be mine. And I click on the video, and then I get to the part where you show it. I'm like, I wish you could see my face right now because it was like this look of like dread because I was like, oh no, like I could have done so much better. Like I did not think this was gonna be ever be used for anything. Um, but also I was like so excited because I saw the video had like 20,000 views at that point. I was like, dude, this is crazy. But yeah, I mean, it was really cool. It was a great video, by the way. It was really cool. They had like all those guys on there collabing, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed making it. I probably
That's
could have done a
that's
little bit better.
hilarious. You know what? It was the best one that I could find, and it's not easy putting together an iceberg. I'm actually going to be doing a follow up to that video, probably around March, April, the start of the season, and I'm already dreading just making one myself because it's like what, especially when you're such a fan of the game and you're so immersed into it, you kind of have to separate yourself a bit and go like, okay, so what's the surface level knowledge? Like, what's the stuff that everybody probably knows, and then what are the stories that I only know because I live, eat, breathe this game from as a fan. So I thought you did a great job. That's so funny, and I made sure I gave you. I mean, I used your name on Tier Maker. It was like Jack.
Oh yeah, that's Jack of all trades
Jack
is
in the
my old
Box.
YouTube name.
Jack of all
Yeah, yeah,
trades.
yeah.
Yeah. So I made sure, give you all the credit. I'm never gonna use somebody's what they make and not give them credit for it. I try to be really good about that. But that's hilarious. I mean, that's got to be such a weird moment to be
Yeah,
like,
it was so
wait a
it was
minute.
like crazy, but yeah, I'm glad you made it. And also another thing, when I was making it, that's a good point you made because when I was making like the top of the iceberg, I was thinking, all right, who am I making this for? Like, am I making it for somebody that has never been interested in baseball before to try to get them interested in the sport, or for somebody is like knowledgeable about the sport and like knows a lot? Like, I don't know how much I should be going into this, and also I was just pretty much thinking of stuff that's happened off the top of my head. I didn't really research that deep into it when I was making it. But another thing, I did comment on that video, like let me, or so people could like tell me stuff that I could add to it, and I have been adding stuff over time of stuff that I missed to try to keep up with that.
I'll definitely,
Good
I'll
luck, good luck
definitely,
making that next iceberg. There's a lot
yeah,
of
I'll
stuff.
definitely look at your updated one as a reference. Because I mean, it's one of those things. I end up, getting my best ideas while I'm, walking, and uh, probably the further away I get from a computer, the more good ideas I have. And there was one day I was walking through the park, and I was just cooking. I was it's like, oh my god, that would be such a good one for the top of the iceberg. That would be such a good story for the bottom of it. And then I'm like fiercely typing on my notes app. So I'll definitely consult you as the time gets closer to the you know much anticipated follow up to the MLB iceberg.
All right, cool. So I guess this is a good time to move on. I want to hear your thoughts on the 2023 season since it just ended a couple of weeks ago. So I think it's a good time to go over that because it was a crazy season.
Oh yeah.
First time we've had, two 6 seeds make it to the World Series, I believe. Or was it 5 and a 6 seed?
The Diamondbacks were the sixth seed, and then the Rangers, I believe, were the no, because they played the best record, so they were also the
So
sixth
yeah, so
seed,
here
I
let me
believe.
let me fact check that. But that's
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, I've heard people say that it's kind of made the playoffs less valuable because I mean you have these teams that like I guess you could say like didn't earn being there and then making it. But
Yeah,
I kind of disagree with that because I really like Cinderella stories. I like when the teams that aren't supposed to win actually go ahead and win it. I think that's fun.
yeah, they actually did a study a while back about how many games need to be played in a basketball series to truly determine the best team. And I think it was something like 9 games. Like that's all you need, really, best out of nine. And then they extrapolated that to every other sport. And football it was 11 games, soccer it was 21, baseball was 81. That's how much best out of 81 series is what they use to determine what who is truly the better team. Now I didn't, I can't like recite the minutia, the variables they used, the formula behind it, but the thing is that it's such a funny game because you have these teams that are. I mean, I would, and again, this could just be, my baseball tinted glasses on, but out of every sport, it uses analytics the most.
Oh
It's
yeah.
such an analytically driven sport, but it's also a sport where the most, you know, random BS happens too. And in a 7 game series, random BS is just going to happen. And, I think we don't have enough of a sample size to truly determine, is this the best format? The number one seeds getting a week off. Like, is that fair? Are they, or the 1 and 2 seeds, do they get rusty? It's only been 2 years. And, the fact is last year, the Astros were the number one seed in the AL and they ended up winning. It didn't really bother them. So I think we just need more time. And you're right too. I love Cinderella stories. That's one of the things that makes this sport great is that it gives teams like the Diamondbacks a chance. You go into the NBA playoffs, the 8 seed has zero chance. I mean, tell me the last 8 seed that made it to the conference finals even.
I
It
couldn't.
just rarely happens. And that's why people like March Madness so much
Yeah.
is because it's only one game and anything can happen in one game. So I think we're gonna have to give it a few more years to truly determine. I think if in the next 5 years this happens like 3 more times, then we should probably reevaluate how we're doing this. And honestly, the best structure was probably, I would say, the top 2 teams in the league going to the championship series, then going to the World Series. We're not going to get those days back. There's just too much money involved. But so those are my thoughts. I don't hate it. I don't necessarily love it either. But I do think anybody who is coming to a conclusion after 2 years just doesn't understand how data works and how aren't thinking about the big picture.
Right. And to correct myself earlier, the Rangers were a 5 seed, and the Diamondbacks were 6. So yeah, still, I mean, they had to
Who's the
play
who's the 6 seed in the AL?
the Blue Jays.
Blue Jays. Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah. No
Imagine
wonder I
if
forgot about them.
imagine if we had the Blue Jays versus the Diamondbacks. That would have been
That would be a very aesthetically
interesting.
pleasing. That would be the Gabby Moreno
Oh
series.
yeah, that would have been the like Canadian versus like the most like the hottest area team. That would have been pretty fun. Oh, they would have had to fly
Yeah.
back and forth.
Oh,
That would have been
that travel
crazy.
schedule would have been brutal. That's what I liked about the Rangers and Diamondbacks. It was the Southwest series.
Right.
I bet Chili's did some good numbers. A lot of people going to Chili's to watch those games.
Yeah, and to go back also, I think the whole probability thing, it's also, and the whole stats thing is, since it's such a team sport, I think baseball is more of a team sport than any other sport. You, like, really, every player needs to do their best for their team to win.
Yeah, I tried to. I actually, so I had a video that I was gonna do way back when, and I literally just decided like I just don't have the time. I just don't have like the mental acuity, whatever word you want to use. But it was going to be about the 2018 Red Sox, and I was going to do a video about how they were essentially built like a basketball team, where
Interesting.
they didn't necessarily have a lot of depth, but they had such good high end talent, and that's how they're able to completely. I mean, most wins since the 2001 Mariners in a regular season, and they won the World Series.
Yeah,
You could argue that.
I have a trivia question for you.
Oh God.
Do you know who the World Series MVP for the 2018 Red Sox was?
Was it Steve Pierce?
Yes. Wow, it was.
Yeah.
Dude,
I
somebody told me that, and they were like, "Oh, so yeah, Steve Pierce won the MVP in the World Series." I was like, "What year was that? Like the 70s, 80s? Like I've never even heard this name before." And then it happened in 2018. I'm like, "What?" It's like
Yeah.
makes no sense.
It was a third AL East team he played for that year, I believe. He was on the
Wow.
Orioles and Blue Jays, I think. And yeah, the Red Sox. It was just like a kind of a piece of depth actually that they desperately needed because they had they actually their first baseman going into the season was Hanley Ramirez, who is such a fascinating player to me because he came up as like this super athletic shortstop, and then ended his career basically as like Manny Ramirez but at first base. But they cut him in the middle of the season. Needed first base depth. I think they had like Mitch Moreland playing, and my family's from New England, by the way. So
Oh, cool.
I'm pretty openly a Braves fan, obviously, but I still keep tabs on the Red Sox. Like if they're doing well, it's a good time for me and the fam. But what was I saying? Yeah, Steve Pierce went off in the World Series. It's just one of those, anybody can get hot in October situation. But basically, I was going to do a video about how they were built like a basketball team, and I tried to calculate the impact an individual player has on a baseball field compared to a impact a basketball player has. I was going to compare Mike Trout to LeBron James, and I just the way I went into it, I don't think was like the right method. Where I was like, LeBron James touches the ball 100 times per night. I don't know. I'm just making that off the
Right,
top
yeah,
of my
yeah.
head. Mike Trout gets 4 at bats, maybe makes 3 plays in the outfield, and one of them is actually a play that only Mike Trout can
True.
make.
I mean, yeah, like the basketball players are out there on the court making an impact the entire game, depending on if they're starting or not, like how many minutes they get. But I mean, baseball players only have a chance to make an impact, like what'd you say, like 5% of the time. I mean, of course, when they're when they're batting, and when a ball gets hit to them in the field, if they're playing in the field, they could also be DHing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah, and 90% of plays are routine,
Right.
so it's not like if a pop up to center, it's not like, oh man, good thing Mike Trout's in center field. I mean, you could literally have, I'm trying to think of like a bad center fielder, but
Isaiah
you could
Kiner-Falefa.
literally have. There we go. You could literally have Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, and he would still make that play.
I
So,
had to watch him play center field several times this season and last season.
oh man.
Yeah, so what made you a baseball YouTuber? Because there's so many different avenues you can go down.
So originally, I started my first YouTube channel back in 2020, and I had this idea. Obviously I'm a musician. You know, I'll be probably coming to, a town. Whoever's listening to this, I'll probably be coming to a town near you next year. Planning some big things. So, I'm a music guy first and foremost, and originally I wanted to do a music channel, and so I've always wanted to do YouTube. I mean, even when I was a kid, I used to play a lot of Call of Duty, and I was like, man, if I can just get a capture card and do some Call of Duty commentary videos, like Blame Truth or X Jaws, like those guys who've most of them fallen off the wagon, unfortunately, but. I've always had like a fascination with it, and even back in the day, I mean, I kind of had like a falling out with baseball when I went to college and got super busy, and I got really preoccupied with band stuff. But then I got back to it in around 2017. I had a coworker who I was working at a Mellow Mushroom, and he kind of got me back into it. He was a Mets fan. Shout out Dave if you're listening to this. And I kind of just it kind of all came back at once, and I started getting into the baseball YouTube community. Guys like Stark Raving Sports, guys like John Boyce, and then eventually Foolish Baseball, Urinating Tree, and it seemed so attainable. And so then 2019 rolls around, and I have this idea to do a mockumentary, and I've always wanted to do like a full on mockumentary. But I was going to do a mockumentary where I was going to listen to nothing but butt rock for a week, so like Nickelback, Creed, and so I ended up doing most of that series and releasing it pretty much all of 2020, and it was bad. You can still watch them on YouTube. They're awful. Like they're really bad.
You gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, you could definitely tell the
Yeah.
person who made them had literally no idea what he was doing. It's fun to go back and watch them, and I had a lot of fun making them, obviously. And then it was Valentine's Day 2021, where I'm just graduated from college, and I picked up a shift. There's this valet company I used to work for, and I picked up a shift there, and it just kind of struck me. I wanted to do like an internet historian type of video on Yasiel Puig, and it was just like one of those things. Like just the well of ideas all started flowing out at once, and it's like at this point, I was getting decent at editing. I was getting, I picked up the experience. Like you said, we all start somewhere, so I was picking up the experience, and so I'm like, you know what, I'm unemployed, pretty much. Let me start a baseball channel, and I'm kind of going through all the ideas and start writing it. I think the videos privatized now. I'm not every. It's one thing is I just Yasiel Puig's kind of a not great person, and it's kind of embarrassing, I would say, like how much I advocated for him in that video. And not like it wasn't like I was advocating like the worst parts of him, but it's just there's like a point I think I say like hashtag free Yasiel or something, like the whole idea of the video
Yeah.
was about how he kind of started the trend of like the let the kids play, of being able to show more emotion.
Yeah, it was like him.
kind of
I remember it was him and Jose Fernandez. Like when they really started showing emotion on the field, that was a really fun time to be a baseball fan, because like all these people were arguing like should they let them do this, and I was like, man, it's just fun to watch,
Yeah, no, it was awesome, and and that's what I was trying to advocate for. And a lot of players like Madison Bumgarner, I know they got into some fights over it, and I know he was benched a couple times, and and he was just an eccentric guy too. I mean, there was a lot of fun stuff to write about. Like one time he was late to a game because he used to take a helicopter to Dodger Stadium, and like the helicopter just like didn't work or something, or like that they weren't cleared to fly. So it was
Interesting.
it was a fun video to make. Ultimately it wasn't great, and by this time I got a full-time job. So but I was like, I really enjoy doing this, and I try to kind of double time it between my music channel and my baseball channel. So you'll see there's some overlap there. I made a couple videos for my music channel, and then basically I think it was like early 2022, I was like, what, I just want to focus on No More Fielders, because this is what I enjoy doing. And I feel like with music channels, I didn't feel like I brought anything new to the table. Like I didn't feel like I brought anything that Mike the Snare or Middle Eight or all these really great creators were bringing to the table. But with No More Fielders, I felt like I brought something a little different to the table, just kind of my background and everything. So and obviously I wear my influences on my sleeve. I mean, you could obviously tell. Watch a lot of Foolish Baseball. You could obviously tell. I have a freaking Dorktown poster in my room. Huge John Boyce fan. So I definitely wear my influences on my sleeve. But I do feel like just as this, the touring musician and everything, that I can bring something new to the table, just that I couldn't do with my music channel. So and it's fun. I mean, I love creating graphs. I love finding angles and telling stories and just it is cool when I just find myself involuntarily thinking about video ideas and how to tackle certain subjects. And it's something that I'm still you know trying to find my way in. And just even watching a video from a year ago, like it just the improvement in of itself is just really fun to watch.
Like one of my favorite things about sports content in general, and I think this also stems from John Boyce, but shout out to him by the way. He's also one of
Yeah.
my
Oh my
favorites.
gosh, he is so
But
good.
you have to, when you're picking a story to write about, you kind of have to find a way to create a narrative where it's emotional, it's interesting. You have to find the stories that people haven't heard and bring it to the surface.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, I don't know if you watched the Atlanta Falcons series or
Oh, of
the
course, of course.
Minnesota Vikings series, but like there were points in those videos where like I was on the verge of tears. Like it was just
Oh
so
yeah.
like, and it's this thing that like only John Boyce can do, and it's like I don't know how you do it, man.
He's
It's
so
so
good at just weaving a tale and finding, and that's something I've kind of struggled with in a lot of ways, where I try so hard to try to find, and there's just an extra level that he's able to achieve that I think I'll be able to get to one day. But it's just he's been doing it for so long, and he's just mastered the art form. Yeah, the especially the graphic of their win-loss record, and them somehow being able to shape it into the Falcons logo, like
yeah.
that absolutely blew my mind.
It's just pure creativity. I think his influence has honestly gone beyond like sports, like YouTube.
Yeah.
It's just
uh
it's gone into like everywhere. There's
yeah
people that don't even watch football that know what scoregami is.
exactly. It's really funny. There was one day back in 2021 where um I have one of my roommates who's a bassist for a pretty big emo band, was asking me. He's like, "Okay, cool. Do you know who John Boyce is?" I was like, "Yeah, of course I do." And he was like, "Yeah, like me and the band, like we're just like obsessed with him now." And this is somebody who's like not a sports guy at all. I mean, they literally. I used to feel kind of bad for being a sports guy around them, because it's like, oh, it's not cool. It's not emo, or it's not alternative, or whatever to like sports. But here he was like talking to me about the entire history of the Atlanta Falcons, and it was just that crossover. That was definitely, like, especially that moment was such a light bulb moment of like, okay, so it's like if you can tell a compelling enough story, you can get people who don't even like sports. You just And the way he's able to do it, where I kind of knew this was going to turn to a John Boyce. There's like the
Yeah.
inevitability. It's like, how long can two people who are both into sports and YouTube go without talking about John Boyce? So I'll try to keep this brief. But that was the light bulb moment where I was like, okay, you can draw people in even if they're not like huge baseball fans. You just The way he's able to do it, where he's able to appeal to both like hardcore fans and then casual fans, is just unmatched. It's actually just unbelievably impressive.
Yeah, I agree. Um, so moving on from John Boyce, I think it's a good time to do that. Let's talk more about your videos. So, two of them that stick out, of course, the iceberg video, but also 762, one of my favorite videos of yours. Um, congrats on the
That was
reception of that, man. Those are
Yeah,
huge. Just popped off.
that was a big moment. Yeah, first 200,000 view video. That one I definitely just like the timing of that was excellent, and that's something I tried to recapture like, at the end of the season. It didn't really work out as well. Just a learning experience. That one was fun though because I started writing the script after Pujols hit his homer, and I remember I was just like on my phone, not on my phone, but like just always checking like Aaron Judge's like every at bat. Like I just had it live. Like as soon as he hits number 62, like we're gonna get started here. And that was a fun video to make because it was just like ideas were flowing. Like you know it's gonna be a good video where you're just having to cut stuff. Like you're just having to cut different because you're like there's just too much here. And that was fun to make. I love the fact that, uh, and maybe if now that I say it, it's gonna change. But the Red Dead Redemption 2 soundtrack is not copyrighted, which has served me very well because that is an amazing soundtrack,
Oh yeah,
and
dude.
being able to use
I
it.
reach all over the place when I need to use music because I like all video game soundtracks, or not all of them, but most video game soundtracks aren't copyrighted because of the agreements with YouTube, and if you're doing like a let's play, and it's in the background, like what do you do? I think,
Yeah,
but that helps. That's great.
yeah, yeah. I mean, anything to help. It's very rare for the small guy to get a win, and thank God they axed Sopa back in the day because I know or Sopa or the other act, if any of those were passed, then it would be a totally different story. But yeah, that was awesome. And I just remember like releasing it and the overwhelmingly positive reception and um yeah, no, it was just a fun video to make it. And then the slew of other videos came out, and I was like, ah, nice. I was the first one to it, and I'm not saying like any like I'm glad that other people had their takes on it. That's definitely one thing that
It was such a
is
historic. Sorry to cut you off, but it was such a
you're
historic
good.
moment that it was bound to be talked about, whether or not.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
it was. I'm saying this again, but as a Yankee fan, seeing Judge do that, like you knew that season when that happened, that was going to be something that you're going to remember for the rest of your life.
all right. I got
And
a question for you.
okay.
What do you think is going to happen again next? Do you think somebody's going to get to 700, or somebody's going to get hit 62
Oh,
homers in a
okay.
season? Yeah,
NL and AL. Oh, I guess it doesn't really matter
both.
anymore. For
Yeah,
I think the
a clean
most.
record.
I think the most likely thing to happen is over 62. I think that is
Mm.
even it's such a crazy feat to
But
accomplish.
but
I
think
don't
about
yeah.
like not counting the steroid era. Well, okay, never mind. I can't. I was gonna. Never mind. I was gonna end up what's the word? Not paradoxing myself, but I was gonna be like, well, if you don't count the steroid era, it took this many years for 62. I'm like, well, Barry Bonds probably wouldn't have gone to 700 if he wasn't, injecting himself with steroids every day, the early 2000s. So they're both pretty much like same rarity. I would argue if you cut out the steroid era, last 62 homer season
Yeah.
was 1960 or sorry 61 homer season was 1961, and then Hank Aaron joined the 700 club in like 1970. So
I'm just like trying to take into account like who right now is the closest and like has the best chance of reaching 700.
the
And
active
I'm
home run
looking at it
leader.
like I mean you the 62 record it could technically be broken any season, but
Exactly,
the
exactly.
700 record it takes an entire career to do, and that's
It's
like
like
without major injuries, without a steep
yeah,
decline.
and think about the 60 game season, just how many records we may lose because of
True.
that, because all those games that we lost. So yeah, I think 62 is probably obviously just logically most likely to happen again. But it's like even think about everything that went right for Aaron Judge's season. I mean, he was on a heater for 6 months, which like even the Aaron Judges of the world, that's hard to do. That's hard to be slump proof for 6 months of a season, play almost every day. I mean, obviously he's played more than 140 games, what, like 3 times in his career?
Yeah, being that big, you're
2017.
you're bound to be injury prone, and going a whole season without having anything major is like nothing short of a miracle. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can get some
So,
more seasons like that in the future.
what's so frustrating about this season is that his injury wasn't a soft tissue injury. He just got it because the Dodgers play in a ballpark that's older than my dad.
Right. Yeah, like I remember I was watching that play when it happened. I was watching that game with my family, and when he made that catch, I was like, "Oh my God, like is he going to be okay?" I was
I
like,
mean, it looked like he broke Dodger Stadium more than Dodger
"Yeah.
Stadium broke him. And then he's out of the lineup the next day. You're like, oh no, like
Yeah."
here we go again. Aaron Judge injury season is on. That's going to be that. It's so funny the amount of plays that were made this year that are going to be on highlight reels for years to come. I think back to the Hunter Renfroe no look catch on opening day, and I was watching that play live. I was just, start of the season, you just want to watch as much baseball as you can, and I was really interested about intrigued by the Angels this year because this was pretty much the last shot they had, and they're playing the A's, so it's like easy win. And I think that catch was a lot, very symbolic of what their season would be. The fact that they had Hunter Renfroe playing right field, who literally made a routine play look like a catch of the year because of how badly he misplayed it.
Yeah.
I know. I think Anthony Rendon like almost attacked a fan after that game. Oh man, the Angels are a very,
Dude, I forgot about
very
that.
sad team.
I forgot that
He,
like did he get suspended for that at all? I
I,
forgot about that.
I think he did. I think he got suspended for a couple games. I mean, he like reached out and grabbed that fan. I hope he's okay.
2023 was
The
such a
fan.
2023 was just such a like a funny season. There was just so many things
Yeah.
that you like look back on and are like, "Oh yeah, that happened."
I love watching back. It's gonna be so fun watching old broadcast in a couple years where they're all explaining the pitch clock and the bases. Because like first month of the season, every time you watch a game on Sunday Night Baseball, it was like, okay, just so you know now, this game's a little more exciting than it was. But they can't just like stay on the mound scratching their butt for 45 seconds. Like they gotta throw it home. So, um, that was such a big change. I think the pitch clock was a huge win, and I think this is just the first year of it. Just the coming years, I think we're going to see such a big growth for the game, um, just because it's like fast paced, and it's kind of funny thinking about like, yeah, I used to just spend like 3.5 to 4 hours watching like a Braves game every day, like the time commitment that was. And now like the pitch clock has probably saved me. I mean, I can't do the math in my head right now, but probably like almost a day's worth of time, just for how much of the game is now shaved off. All the downtime is shaved off. So big win in my opinion. It is gonna be fun seeing teams how they, because I don't think teams knew how to manipulate the disengagement rule, where you get pretty much 3 disengagements. If you don't get the guy on the third, like he gets a free base. Like even during the playoffs, I noticed I think they threw over to Evan Carter at first twice, and I would love to see it where if a team is at, if a runner is at 2 disengagements, them just trying to get like the biggest lead they can, because it's like, hey man, if he throws over, just run to second, like, or because or just different strategies or just like get a big lead, but do not intend to go to second at all. Just go back home. If he doesn't get you, you get the base. So that's gonna be really fun to watch in the next couple of years. There's so much of the metagame that I feel like is going to be not
Yeah.
exploited necessarily. That's the
It
wrong word.
hasn't
That's going
been
to be
it
toyed
hasn't
with.
been explored yet. And there's going to be some new
Exactly,
things that
exactly.
are going to be like found out, some not loopholes, but
Um,
just finding the
my
boundaries.
my next video, it's gonna be on. It's on the 2023 White Sox, and I
Oh,
just
that's
I
fun.
basically Yeah, the Jason Benetti news was kind of not the perfect thing because it sucks. I hate it. Jason Benetti is one of the best announcers in the game, and that is absolutely heartbreaking seeing him have to announce for the Tigers now because he's a lifelong White Sox fan, and I feel like some stories are going to come out the next few weeks about how that devolved. But I just watched a White Sox game like that. Basically going to be covering it and show how it's like a microcosm of like all the issues they have as a team. And one thing that was fun about that, it's not going to be in the video, but just one fun little anecdote was that Joe Kelly, former reliever for the Dodgers, Red Sox, etc., was on the White Sox this year, and he was a guy who tried to manipulate the pitch clock, where he was not only was he changing his delivery, but he would kind of do it where he'd like wait to the last second. He'd almost kind of like play chicken with the batter, like trying to get them to step out, and then start his delivery before they can step out or call timeout. That was really fascinating to watch.
That's cool. I'm just trying to think of how fun it is to, or how fun it's going to be to explain pre-pitch clock baseball to a kid in like 20 to 30 years. Like they're just going to be like,
Oh
so,
yeah.
so you could so you could just hypothetically just stand on the mound for 5 minutes and not do anything
Yep.
and not
Yep.
face any punishments. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty much. Pretty much. That clip that went viral of Jose Altuve's inside the park homer, and then that guy who was on the Dodgers.
Oh yeah, I saw that
the-
too. I saw that too. I'll try to find
Like
that video.
how many, how many Jose Altuve inside the park homers can he hit
In between
during
pitches.
this at-bat?
Yeah.
Was it in between pitches?
It was
oh
like
my gosh,
yeah, or it might have been during the at bat, but I saw that video. It was so funny.
that was
It
like
just
the
it
biggest.
just puts into
indictment.
perspective like how like action is in baseball, because you have
Yeah.
these high action plays like less than, I don't know, less than 5%, maybe even less than 1% of the game, depending on what game you're going to. And then yeah, it's just you have these other moments
Yeah.
where nothing, literally nothing is going on.
Yeah, and that's a lot of sports too. Football, most of it is just the time between plays. Same with baseball. Basketball is a little bit different. Like basketball, you have the most continuous action going on. But I will say though, and honestly, I'm swear I'm not going to be like, oh, this is why baseball is the best sport. But if I were to say that, one argument I would have is that whenever I watch a basketball or a football game, especially one that's close in the fourth quarter, man, the game just slows down to a crawl with all the timeouts, all the play stoppages. One thing that I think, if I were to make the argument, not saying I am, but if I were to make the argument that baseball is the best sport, it's the fact that you don't have that in the bottom of the ninth. You can have a mound visit, you can have a pitching change, but it's like the game has to go. Like the game has to go at a certain point. You can't just like time out your way to a victory or to extra innings.
You can't really
So-
ice the pitcher.
Exactly. So, especially now without the pitch clock, it's like you have to go. You can't just step off a bunch of times. Like you have to throw home. And I think, again, we just saw the first year of the pitch clock. It's only going to get better from here. Data's going to come out about injuries, and you're going to have your people with the drawbacks, and not everything is a total net positive. Like there's going to be negatives to every action, but I think overall all the rule changes this year were a complete smash, like a complete success. I think they did a really good job advertising it too. I know MLB, whenever you're watching a game on MLB.TV, they had the sort of they had the diamond, they had kind of the clock ticking away from it, and they're showing like all the action, all the emotion. Like I think they're doing a good job, and this is going to be a really, really unpopular opinion, and if you want to clip this to have this be the big viral moment of this podcast,
Okay.
I think Rob Manfred is a fine commissioner.
You like him?
I think he's like totally. I don't like him because he's still a shill for the owners. Like his job is literally to be the conduit between some of the worst people on earth and the players. I mean, he literally works for the owners. He is literally their not a servant. But just let's okay. This is I'm defending Rob Manfred here. You know what? I actually have a lot of really bad opinions. I've realized over the years. So this is going to be one of them. Let's just go over his recent track record here. He was able to navigate both the players and owners through one of the toughest collective bargaining negotiations of all time without missing any games. That is insane. That is actually like think about every other commissioner. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on this, but every other commissioner who served as long as Rob Manfred has seen at least one work stoppage during their time as commissioner. Bud Selig, who was the guy before?
When was the last
I'm blanking
major
on
holdout in the MLB? Was it 1994?
1994. Yeah. I think there was there was a might have been a lockout or strike during the off season since then, but that was the first one, or and since that we lost games and we lost a championship. I mean, think about
Yeah.
how embarrassing for the sport that was.
The effect of losing a championship for a whole year. I mean, people have talked about this to this day, but we might still have the Expos if that
Yeah,
season was played out. Like, just think
yeah,
about that. We
yeah,
could still have a second team in Canada.
yeah. And I mean, they've
And
been
also,
ever since they
you
lost
talked
them.
about it in 762, but Judge and Pujols might have not even broken those records if there was
Yeah,
a lockout.
if we lost any games, the fact, I mean, yeah, the season was delayed, but the fact that we were still able to play a 162 game season, like the fact that, and I'm not saying it was all Rob Manfred. These are very complicated situations with a lot of moving parts, but at the end of the day, he is the one who's at all the meetings. I mean, he is the one who's basically at the center of it all. So there's that.
Do you think he handled the COVID situation good?
That was a weird.
The 60
That
game
was a
season?
weird situation. That could have been handled better, but it also could have been handled worse. I think because of the chaotic situation at hand and just the not knowing. Think about the way the NBA had to handle the situation where their season just basically got cut in the middle.
The bubble.
And actually, they were, it was really funny looking back at it. And I think that was the moment for everybody where we realized, like, oh, this is real when they suspended the season. I think that was the moment where everybody's like, oh, wow, this is like an actual, the basketball season's been suspended. That's how we knew, like, okay, this is actually like a big deal. So, I mean, and they had to do the Disney bubble and like literally play championship games literally in front of like TV screens.
That was so crazy looking at like highlights from that. It was just such a bizarre like season.
Yeah. I mean, even for us YouTubers, like none of us used clips from 2020 because it just looks so weird. Like we just really want to forget it, which
Yeah.
sucks because like a lot of good moments still happened, but I feel bad for all the players who made their debut and their parents couldn't be there, or all the players who that was like their last season, or I mean, think about like even Shohei Ohtani that year. He was awful in 2020 because here he is, miles and miles away from his home during a global pandemic, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you got to play to empty stadiums everywhere. Good luck, have fun." And he was awful in 2020. So I think it was such a bizarre situation. And I think the decision to expand the playoffs that year, because there was like 16 playoff teams, which was way too much, but he knew that the only way they were making money that season was through the TV deals, and he's like, "That's how we're gonna recoup our money." So I think he handled it well. The really his biggest drawback, in my opinion, is that he just is a terrible speaker. He's
Oh, dude,
just
he
he's
sounds
bad.
like yeah, he sounds like he's about to like go into an aneurysm when he was
He
giving that
sounds
that.
intoxicated. Like
Yeah,
like I'm pretty sure he's sober. So sorry, I don't mean any offense by this, but he sounds like he's just like drunk.
he
Like he
does.
sounds like he
Yeah, he
just had
does. No, he does.
like 5 shots of Smirnoff Ice before he goes out every time he speaks. So that to me is like the only thing that I would say. I think if he just was a little bit better of a speaker and was a little more commanding, kind of. I mean, I hate Bud Selig, but like Bud Selig, I think would be looking at him in a lot different light. And you know what? He's the first commissioner during the true social media phase. You know, it's just cool to hate on things
True.
in
Yeah.
this time.
I think when we
And
look
he's
back in the future, I'm interested how people will look back on his tenure as commissioner.
I think it's gonna be a net positive. And like think I mean Bowie Kuhn. That was the commissioner before um, Paul Giamatti's dad. That was who it was. I'm pretty sure. Sorry. Um, I think we're gonna look back at it like, okay, you know what? Yeah, he whiffed on a lot, but he also was a great ambassador for the game and did his job to the best of his abilities. When you know a lot of his job is literally just being a being a paint sponge for the owners. So I in Rob Manfred we trust. Even when I did the Rob Manfred video way back in the day, and this was before the strike. This was before the pitch clock changes. Like it was very satirical. Like it was very uh just kind of pee and poop humor on Rob Manfred. But even when I was researching, I was like, you know, he's actually like got a decent pedigree. It's just if he just was able to like do like a king's speech where he just got like a person to help him.
Like a speech therapist.
Yeah, somebody to help him like formulate his thoughts a little bit better. That's the only thing that's to me holding him back from being not like a beloved commissioner, because that's never going to happen, but like from at
Yeah.
least being like tolerated, which like I tolerate him. That's probably the best way I can describe it. I tolerate Rob Manfred.
All right. So moving on now. So how do you decide what to make a video about?
Oh man. Okay. So a lot of factors. Like I said, I don't know if I said this on air or when we're talking on the side, but so a lot of my best ideas come from when I'm either walking or driving, and it just kind of comes from just kind of I just passively find myself thinking a lot about baseball and music. Really, just those two things. It's like fine dining and breathing. So so just recently, let's go with the Astros rotation video, for example. That was originally supposed to be on the 2019 Nationals, and so that idea came from the fact that it was always fascinating to me how a team navigates the postseason with a starting rotation, and the whole conceit of that sort of video, and it's going to be kind of something of a series, how to build a championship rotation, where it's like, okay, who got the outs? Like who were the starters for the series? How are they acquired? What kind of pitch mix do they have? What do they have in the arsenal? And how do they use that to help their team win in the postseason? And it literally just came from thinking about the Washington Nationals and the fact that they pretty much won a championship off of three pitchers, pretty much. And it's like, what did they do to get them? And sort of what different roadmaps did each individual pitcher have to be able to find their success in the big leagues? Another idea, and a lot of them are just kind of like situation specific. Like the duos video was just Ronald Acuna Jr., Matt Olson, and then Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts in Los Angeles both were having monster seasons, as teammates. And so I was like, how many times has this happened before where these two teammates basically run the entire league? And how many times has that happened even in like the same season? And then I was like, what if I just went back and covered, some of the best duos of all time? and then sort of relate that to what's going on in the 2023 season. So it really just comes from like a variety of places, and a lot of it's just like, I read a lot of fan graphs. I read. Okay, this is a very embarrassing uh, admission, but I do read a lot of ESPN articles. They've fallen off heavily. I think it's just a force of habit. But Sam Miller, he is one of my favorite writers. He used to write for ESPN. Unfortunately, he was let go. One their one of their more recent layoffs. I think he got laid off during the pandemic. He's been a huge inspiration, just sort of like the creativity from his articles. Grant Brisbee, he's with the Athletic now. He used to write for SB Nation, now Secret Base, and I think just like over the years, just all this like baseball media that I've consumed, it's just given me sort of the basis for coming up with an idea and trying to have a unique way of appreciating the game and of appreciating records and players and stories.
One of my favorite series that you do is the replacing series,
Hmm.
where you talk about like what happens after a star player is gone. I think that's something that not a lot of people think about.
So this is actually funny. I actually got this idea from a Foolish Baseball video where he talked about Yankee center fielders. He's like, this is like a kind of a secret dynasty. Like, we don't talk about how good Yankees have been at finding and developing center fielders, or trading, or however they acquire them. So the first conceit of that was, oh, I want to find a team that's the exact opposite of that. And that's why I had the Royals video. I was like, I want to look at a team that is awful at developing or trading for a certain position. And that video did all right, but I felt like the scope of it, there wasn't really an interesting angle. And so I'm like, what's a way that I can like do this, because I had a lot of fun doing it, and it is fun connecting the dots of different players playing just one position for a franchise. And I'm like, what's something I can do to make it like like I could package it and make it so it's like intriguing, like there's an extra level of intrigue. And then I thought about Derek Jeter, and I thought about Yankees shortstops after Jeter retired and how they've struggled to fill his shoes. And and then thinking about like the psychological impact on players, I don't really get into too much, but how does the city react? How do people um kind of accept somebody who's filling the position of someone who was a once beloved player filled. And so then I was like, I could do this with so many players. I mean, there's so many uh stalwarts and just monumental players who pretty much, for better or worse, played the same position their entire career. And then how does the team basically fill in their shoes? And it's such a fun series to work on. The one after my White Sox video is going to be replacing David Wright of the Mets, and that's going to be such a it's going to be such a roller coaster of a video. I'm
looking forward to
it.
that. I'm looking forward to that. And also
Um,
the foolish baseball video about the center fielders or outfielders for the Yankees, just coming from a fan of the team, like we're so spoiled. I mean, we pretty much expect like an elite outfield. I mean, just an elite team in general, but especially the outfield, just straight up like in
yeah,
like recently. I mean, we've had fill-in players. I mean, still, I mean, we've had Harrison Bailey. We've had so many outfielders. I'm just thinking off the top of my head of players we've had, and we're so lucky to have like Judge. We got Stanton, of course, and I mean, there's rumors we might get Soto. The chance of that happening, I don't even know, but yeah, it's compared to these other teams. I mean, of course, the Royals, um, Athletics,
yeah.
Marlins. We were very lucky to have those players, and it's an interesting thing to look at because replacing these generational talents is not something that a lot of people look at, and it really comes down to like the GMs and the coaches and the managers
Yeah.
to find these
And that's one
jobs.
thing, you have to respect about the Yankees during their dynasty of the late '90s, early 2000s, is that so many people are like, oh, they just bought the team, but really they developed most of their core. I mean, Jorge Posada, Andy Pettitte, Derek Jeter, Bernie Williams. I mean, they were all Yankees farm players. I mean, they had one of the best player development systems.
I should
Um,
know this as a Yankees fan, but was Mark Teixeira and Robbie Cano, were they both from the farm team? No, no, no. Mark Teixeira
uh,
he came from the
he,
Rangers, I
he actually came.
believe.
He
Or
actually
did he?
came. Mark Teixeira was actually really funny. He's the reason
I have to
the
look this up
Angels
now.
got Mike. He's the reason the Angels got Mike Trout.
Oh,
Basically,
really?
Um, yes, and Braves are complicit in this too. He was on the Rangers, gets traded to the Braves mid-season 2007. Was freaking awesome for us during that
Oh,
stretch. And then
Teixeira
gets
was on the
traded.
Rangers, then he was on the Angel. Okay, okay.
So then got traded to the Angels, and then basically
He was on the
Angels
Braves too.
offered him. Angels offered him a qualifying offer, and the pick that the Yankees lost when they signed Mark Teixeira was the 25th round pick of the 2010 draft, whatever year Trout got drafted. I'm actually blanking on it now. 2009 draft. That where the Angels picked up Mike Trout. It would have been the Yankees pick. Now look, we don't. I don't know off the top of my head if the Yankees had Trout on their draft board, but considering he's from New Jersey, I would not be surprised if they at least had like scouts on him.
Dude,
So
I mean, we could have
one of
had
the biggest what ifs.
Trout. Yeah, it's one of these what ifs. We could have had Trout. We could have had Harper, but
Yeah,
Cashman.
should have
Oh,
had should have had Harper. I mean,
he wanted to
what
come to the Yankees. Like, what were they
he wanted,
thinking?
he literally that famous article of Bryce Harper when he was 16 years old. He said he had two goals for his career, or I guess one goal was to be inducted in the Hall of Fame in pinstripes. He's going to accomplish one of those.
Oh
He's
yeah,
gonna.
he's
I mean, technically, he's actually accomplished both because the Phillies
they
technically
are
wear
actually in
pinstripes.
pinstripes. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that's actually what he meant the entire time. Yeah, I just my podcast co-host Mitchell, he is very opinionated on Bryce Harper in the way where he's like literally any team could have gone him. Like he's on a relatively team-friendly deal, and he goes like the distance for the city. I mean, during the NLCS, there's all those press photos of him showing up wearing like 76ers uniforms and uh, just I mean he goes the distance for the city of Philadelphia, and any team, the Yankees especially, could have gone that. And I mean, just imagine having it's going to be. I'm very sorry to do this to you, but imagine having Harper instead of Stanton.
Yeah. It's I cry
And
about
now
it
he's
every
playing
day.
first base full time. So yeah, it's I would too. I would too. One of the biggest what ifs. The Trout Harper outfield, Trout Harper Judge outfield, could have happened.
That could have been a possibility.
Very
The thought
outside
of that,
chance.
yeah. And also since you're a Braves fan, obviously, the NL East. I want to hear your thoughts on like other teams in that area. I mean, you got the Phillies, the Mets. I mean, coming from
Phillies have always.
being a Yankees fan, like I keep saying that over and over again, but like the Mets have always been like the little brother team. So
Hmm.
even when they were good a couple years ago, and even like pretty recently, they've always been kind of like a non-threat to us. So I want to hear about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the Phillies have always been the team that I'm scared of. Even this year when the Phillies were in third, fourth place, and this was back in June, and the Mets were actually in second place. The Mets were actually not hot on the Braves' heels, but they were within striking distance. I was always afraid of the Phillies. I'm like they're just such a well built team, and they're a team that uh, both will spend the money. I mean they're running some of the highest payrolls in the game right now. I mean much high. I know the Braves are increasing their payroll this offseason, but the Phillies are just the type of contract that they signed Bryce Harper to. The Braves would never do in a million years, unfortunately. Um, but they also I feel like their player development is good. They had this guy Johan Rojas, who I had no idea who he was. I mean, he wasn't even remotely on his radar, and here he was like playing an excellent center field while not looking. He didn't look overmatched. He looked fairly competent at the plate. Like he looked like he could be a solid 750 OPS guy in center field, and he just came out of nowhere. Um, yeah, they're just a team that's always scared me. The Mets are so interesting right now. And it does scare me that they got David Stearns, who is the former GM or president of baseball ops for the Brewers. A lot of people are I think a lot of people are confused by this, especially when the whole Craig Counsell fiasco happened, where they're like, "Oh, Craig Counsell's not that good of a manager. Like, what have the Brewers done?" But you think about how much juice he's been able to get out of a fairly weak roster. The Brewers had one of the worst offenses last year. Their bullpen was good, but I think they were definitely a team of opportunity, an opportunity granted to them by Craig Counsell. So I think now that he's with the Cubs, I was like a little bit of a tangent, but now he's with the Cubs, like we're gonna get to see the full power of Craig. But David Stearns, being the GM of the Mets, that's definitely concerning. I think they had a pretty good trade deadline too. It was definitely a trade deadline that a competent team makes, which is not a word that I used to associate with the Mets often. I will say the Luis Angel Acuna and Ronald Acuna Jr. story will be really fun to watch when he makes his debut in like 2025, 2026. The
Yeah,
Marlins,
I thought the Mets
uh,
were gonna be scary. Like when they signed Lindor, we thought they were gonna get Correa for like 3 days.
yeah,
I was like scared of that, because if the Mets win a World Series before the Yankees do, I don't know. I don't know
yeah.
how I'm gonna let
Well,
that down with all my fellow
I
Mets fans.
just think about the fact that, I mean, I know a lot of this is kind of before. It seems like prehistory now, but the Yankees have won not four, five World Series since the Mets won their last one, which I think there's some semblance to that. Like if I was a Yankees fan, I definitely wouldn't be like, oh yeah, 27 rings, Mets, because
I'm
it's
not
like,
like
well,
that because yeah,
yeah,
I totally get why people are so annoyed by that, but
it's like
also
most of those rings were
we've
won
the
before your
Yankees
parents were born.
exactly before my grandparents were born. No, like
Yeah,
we've been such a like a competitive team, or not a competitive, even more than that. Like we've been World Series bound, like before the season even starts, for so long, and we haven't made the World Series in it's going to be 15 years if they don't make it next
yeah,
year. So
yeah,
like it's this is going to sound so arrogant, but like it's kind of exhausting being like a team having a being a fan of a team that's so like successful but not successful to
yeah.
like that extent. It's
I mean, y'all are right now have your longest World Series drought since.
the 80s.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think this one's been longer because the Yankees' '80s World Series drought went from like
Oh, they won in
1978
77
to
or 78. Yeah, 78
70,
to 96.
18 years. 18 years. Okay, so maybe not that long yet, but it is looming. I mean, it is getting to. And the thing is that is especially scary is that the AL East is uh, not an easy division.
It's got to be
Like,
it's definitely the hardest division in baseball, I
and
think.
it used to be not an easy division because of the Red Sox and Yankees, but now like the Orioles look like a juggernaut for years to come. I mean, they weren't even supposed to really be a contender this year, and they came up with the best record
Yeah, the Orioles were
in the
crazy.
AL.
I really thought they had the best chance to win it before the playoffs even started, and then they lose in like the first round. But
Yeah, they if they
yeah,
spent like a little bit of money on pitching, they would have had a good shot. And also the experience too. Obviously, I mean they're a bunch of really young players,
yeah.
but I mean, I could see Grayson Rodriguez being getting Cy Young votes in the next couple of years. Adley Rutschman,
Adley
I
Rutschman,
think
he's
a lot of
yeah.
people get confused, like, oh, it's not like he's gonna be, like a 900 OPS guy, but it's the fact that he's a great catcher and he's able to put up a 400 OBP. Like, yeah, his power isn't really there, and it's probably not going to develop much more. But the fact that like you just know what you're going to get from a position where literally the Astros this year, who made it to the ALCS, sent out Martin Maldonado, who is basically a pitcher at this point, hitting wise, to get that kind of production from the catcher position, and that leadership too. I mean, he's I'm so glad that he is who he is because he is hilarious. The watching him in the home run derby was such a treat. Like when he switched switched to the right side of the plate and then just went on another tear. Like that was such a cool moment this year. Um, Orioles are going to be good. Blue Jays, I just don't know what to make of them. They're just a team that I think lacks identity.
The Blue
A
Jays
couple
are in a
years
tough
ago,
spot. They're in a strange
yeah,
position because they have some powerhouses on their team. I don't know if Vladdy is going like I'm really unsure if Vladdy's going to return to his like all-star like self
he
because
he
he
basically
kind of had a rough year.
he basically has this issue where he just really likes uh, hitting ground balls, and unfortunately, when you're if maybe you look a little bit more like Ichiro Suzuki, you can do that
Yeah.
and find success. But
He didn't really
it,
have a really rough year. 26 home runs, 264 batting average,
yeah,
better than Stanton.
but this is a guy that you're expecting
Yeah.
to basically put up, a
Be like the
900,
captain of the
950
team.
OPS. Exactly, exactly. Like he's your three hitter. I mean, I'm pretty sure the Braves like nine hitters put up a better OPS than Vladimir
The
Guerrero
Braves'
Jr. did
worst
this year.
hitter, like somebody on the bench could be like the number 5 hitter on the
Yeah,
Yankees. You,
yeah.
those guys
There
are
was
crazy.
I remember when the Yankees were playing the Braves. I was just
You
looking
guys
at the.
wrecked us. I think didn't you guys sweep us?
Yeah, we did. I was at
That
the
was
Luis
during August.
Severino
That was
game.
during August when like most Yankee fans were on suicide watch because we were on
Yeah,
like that 9 game losing streak. My friend
yeah.
actually, he went to the one game in Miami. I remember they were playing the Marlins. It was the last win they had before they went on
Oh,
that huge losing streak. And I remember like 2 weeks went by, and my friend was like, "Oh yeah, I was at the last time the Yankees won. I was there." And it was like 2 weeks later. I'm like,
oh my
dude,
gosh.
it was
Yeah.
just
No, they were.
depressing.
Yeah, that. It was funny because I went to the Luis Severino game against the Braves, and I was like, he's going to give it 5 runs. He gave it 5 runs, but he actually ended up pitching like 5 or 6 innings. But like the sad part, like I was expecting it to be a fireworks show, but the thing that like made it really sad was the Yankees got like 2 hit that game. It's like one thing if you lose a game, but you have a lot of base runners and you're just like you just didn't get the big hit. It's another thing if like your team can't even get on base. It
Yeah.
just it's
You
hard to create momentum.
about Luis
It's hard to like
Severino.
rally.
About Luis Severino, you know it's bad when you're predicting. Oh, yeah, this guy's probably gonna give up 5 runs, and then he does, and you're like, oh wow, he actually did better than he
Yeah,
expected.
yeah. Oh, I thought he was gonna give up 5 runs in the first inning and then be booted. But it's like, at least he went 5 innings. At least he saved the bullpen some.
Yeah, jeez, man.
Real good start, Luis. Yeah, that I mean, it's just, and stuff happens. I mean, there is due to your variance. I mean, hopefully Carlos Rodon bounces back. I mean, what an awful season that he had.
Yeah,
And
on
it was
paper,
just,
before the season, our rotation looked so like good. I was so hyped, and then that was one of the most depressing seasons ever. Like one
yeah,
our only bright spots. I mean, you had the Domingo Herman perfect game. That's definitely a bright spot. But again, it's Domingo Herman, so you're like
yeah. It
yeah.
was against the A's in
it was against
Oakland.
it was against the Triple A's.
Exactly, the
So
Triple A's. Like he probably, I mean, there was probably like 500 people in attendance like
yeah,
to witness it. That was such a weird moment, that perfect game, because here you have the Oakland Athletics, who are just a team that is basically just they're at the stadium because they have to be. They're not playing for anything. They're not really playing. Besides when they're doing the reverse boycotts, they're not playing for the fans because they know that they're not going to be playing in that city by the end of the
yeah.
decade.
That's
And here they are.
one of the saddest things about this season. Like, uh, the A's are a team that they've always been fun to watch. I think I saw a video one time. It was like Moneyball ruined the A's, which is like an interesting perspective. I don't know if that's it, but um, I've always kind of liked the Athletics, and
Yeah,
seeing them move is just that's the first time in my lifetime that a team has like moved locations. Like
Yeah,
it's kind of a blemish on the league when you have a team that is moving. Because
really is.
when you
And
look
it,
when
it
you look
hurts
at the MLB, it's like these foundations of baseball that are
mhm,
supposed to be there. They're like pretty much like these immovable objects, and then you see them
mhm.
like fall to the ground. And the Oakland Coliseum is a story in itself of how they
Oh
ruined that
yeah,
park. But it's just kind
yeah. I
of
mean, it
it's very
is.
sad as a baseball fan to see that happen.
It is not a major league stadium anymore. I mean, they have minimum requirements, and the Oakland Coliseum just fails them, and that's kind of part of the reason. That's part of the leverage they've used for moving. And what's really sad to see too is that it's this, and I'm not going to be able to articulate it perfectly right here, but the idea that they're moving to Las Vegas, where you come from Oakland, the city of, a bunch of working class people who are diehard fans. I've told this story countless times, but I went to Chicago to go to see a show, to see one of my favorite bands play. But I was like, I'm gonna see a Cubs game too. Like they're playing the Oakland Athletics, and I got tickets to the bleachers. And when you get bleachers tickets, you can sit wherever. It's just like open seating, and I put money on the A's. Like I thought the A's were gonna win. Um, and so I decided to sit with the A's fans because I was like, oh, I'm gonna be cheering for the A's anyway, and they're all here. Some of the most passionate fans I've ever
Oh
talked to.
yeah,
They were literally. I say this all the time, but it just blows my mind. They literally had a chant for their backup catcher. I mean, these are fans that will like go to toe for their team. I mean, they will take a bullet for their team. I mean, they are passionate, diehard. They know everything about the players. I mean, just like nice people too. And these passionate fans
dude.
in
Oakland
Oakland.
Oakland sports fans have been through so much. I mean, they lost the
Oh
Raiders,
yeah,
of course.
yeah. It
The Warriors moved out. They I mean, they kind of
moved across the
they didn't
bay.
really move, but yeah, they swam over the bay
It's exactly, yeah. They just towed the stadium
pretty
across
much.
the bay. But to see them move to Las Vegas, which is a city that is so soulless and is so spoiled in a way, like the city that's like literally Las Vegas was founded by gangsters. I mean, there's a reason they call it Sin City, because it is. I mean, literally, and, I'm not like religious or anything,
And
but
I get that.
it
I'm
just
trying to find the word.
it's just a city without soul, a city without really. And apologies to Bryce Harper. I know he's from Las Vegas, but just a place that just where it's just propped up by not passion, but just by a need to make money.
I think
And
superficial is a good word to describe Las Vegas.
superficial is a really good word. Superficial is a really good word. And to see not only the Oakland fan base lose their team, but to lose it to a city like Las Vegas, who is not going to love the A's as Oakland does and will ever. It's just it's sad. I mean, it brings a tear to my eye.
It's also one of those things where you're also kind of losing the history of
Exactly. Yeah.
that team.
Um, history. I mean, history of Oakland sports, like you said. I mean, they're the last professional team to go, and I mean, hopefully they can build something out. The only way I could see them saving this is if, I mean, Las Vegas wants it. I mean, they pretty much approved all the way. They've approved funding. Uh, taxpayers are going to be footing the bill for most of the stadium. Um, the only thing is if Major League Baseball steps in, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I think they also know too. I mean, they have to move out of the Coliseum for one, and I mean I know they've had plans. There was a Howard Terminal plan back in the day.
I think they could maybe save it. This might be a hot take, but I think if they take down, what's it called, Mount Davis? I think that's what it's called.
No,
The giant thing in the background.
yeah,
I mean, it would
well,
cost $1 billion. It would cost like $500 million or
yeah.
something. But yeah,
I
I
think
think
I
they
don't
could save it.
I don't know if
Maybe.
I don't know if any amount of repairs or renovations can save the Oakland Coliseum.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they do need to get a new stadium. I mean, Milwaukee's going through the same thing. Chase Field's going through the same thing. Where basically, every 15, 25 years, you pretty much have to like renovate your stadium. Like there's
Chase
a
Field
new
feels
code.
so new. It feels like such a new stadium. Like it just got
Chase
built.
Field,
But
yeah,
how
that
long has
was
it been there?
it was opened when
25
the
years?
Diamondbacks 98. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
25
25
years.
years. Yeah.
So it's been 25 years, and that's why they're having to make the renovations. Same with American Family Field. Tropicana is weird because that the stadium's actually a lot older than how long the Rays have been in it. The stadium was completed in like 1992, and the Rays started playing there in '98. So it's a state. There's a reason it like feels a lot older than it actually is, and it's because it is a lot
Dude,
older
the Trop
than
is
they've
such a
been using it.
whole it's a whole different situation since it's in St. Petersburg. I actually visited the Trop, and I had a great time. I thought it was very
I feel
fun.
like I
There,
feel like it's kind of a fun stadium. I think if the lighting was better, I mean, I know they're actually building a new stadium now, but I feel like the Trop has a charm to it, at least.
yeah, it's one of those stadiums that I think baseball fans, if you have the opportunity, you should visit before it's gone. Again, also with the Oakland
Yeah.
Coliseum. But when I was there, there weren't many fans. This was like right after I think it was 2021, so it was like right after the COVID thing. So there still weren't a lot of fans there. But G-Man Choi threw me a ball, which is pretty sick.
Oh, that's awesome.
I caught a home run in spring training, but I don't know who it was by. I think it was by some Oriole.
Damn, I didn't know I was talking to Zach Campbell over here.
Nah, dude, it was great. It was great because there were like 50 people there, so you could do that. You can't do that at
Yeah,
Yankee Stadium.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it was great.
That was
It was a great experience. I really liked it, but it's sad
that
that it's gonna move on. But it's also great that it's gonna move on because the stadium's definitely gonna be better.
yeah. No, I mean, especially we just need to move away from turf too. I mean, actually, Yankees fans could definitely relate. I mean, think about all the small injuries Judge has gotten from having to, you know, roam an outfield with rubber pellets instead of dirt. So no, it's definitely a net positive. How many stadiums have you been to in total?
I have been to Yankee Stadium, the Trop. I visited Camden Yards. Shout out to Camden Yards. That was so fun. I visited
Camden
that
Yards is so
this
nice.
year for the first time. Um, I visited. What am I missing? Oh, National Stadium. Is it just called National Stadium? I think it is.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think they have a sponsor for it.
And City Field.
Okay,
Oh,
so
and
you've
City Field. I did visit the Pittsburgh Pirates Stadium. Oh, what's it called? Is it PNC Park?
PNC.
PNC
That's
Park.
such a that might be the best
I
stadium.
visited there, but it was during the day at a time they weren't playing. I just like me and my friend just like
Did
walked up
like
to
a
the stadium and went in the gift
oh,
shop.
gotcha,
So
gotcha. Yeah,
we were just in Pittsburgh for the day, so I thought that would be cool. And yeah,
yeah.
it's
PNC's
so nice. Pittsburgh is
so beautiful.
it's such a cool city.
Yeah.
But yeah, what about you?
So me, actually, I think my list might actually be shorter than yours. Okay, let me go. So I'm not gonna count Dodger Stadium. So I'm actually was born in Los Angeles. So there's another universe where I'm a Dodgers fan. I'm so thankful I did not live in that universe. So Dodger Stadium, if you want to count these two, I mean, like technically I visited, but I was like so young, I barely remember. Angel
But
Stadium,
you were there. I
and
mean, you could
then
count it.
yeah. Physically, I was present in those two fields at one point. So what I'll put it to my ledger. I'll add it to my resume. Obviously T-Mobile Park. T-Mobile Park's awesome. I love the city of Seattle so much. Trying to think like what made it stand out. It was one of those parks where there wasn't a bad view in the house. Like I kind of just walked around. I mean, I sat on the third baseline, but it was one of those stadiums where it's like left field. Like they have like those rising bleachers, so you feel like you get like a much better view. Like if you're in left field at Truist, you can't see what's happening like right in front of you. But with the
Right.
rising bleachers, like you can see if like the left fielder makes a you know home run robbing catch, like you can see it clear as day because you have that vantage. So T-Mobile's awesome. Definitely recommend checking that out. Wrigley Field, as I mentioned earlier, Wrigley Field, that was such a surreal experience
That's
because
definitely one of my top ones that I haven't visited yet.
it's just a baseball mecca. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you see it all the time, the ivy, and you're actually when you're actually present, it's like you feel the history of the stadium, and you like every perception you've had about it, and now you're finally here. And also kudos to the Cubs too because they renovated the stadium, so it actually feels modern. Like you actually walk around it, and it has that old school charm, but I mean, a lot of stadiums, Fenway, the old school charm is looking at like moldy walls and uh, concourses that look more like warehouses than a ballpark, and we'll get to that in a second. Then Truist, obviously, go to a lot of Braves games, and then Lone Depot went there for the World Baseball Classic. Lone Depot's interesting. It's like you kind of wish it wasn't like okay. So T-Mobile is a retractable roof park, but it doesn't feel like it, and part of that is probably because
Did you
the
go
roof
when it
was
was
open.
open or when it was closed?
I did go when it was open.
That's cool.
Um, but with Lone Depot, it's just like if it just feels overwhelming, like you're just inside like a Walmart or something.
Oh, really?
Um,
That's a really
yeah, like
interesting. They did that really interestingly because it's like a what did you call it? Like a sunroof? Because it like it doesn't like open like a normal
yeah,
dome
it's just
roof.
kind of
It kind of like
yeah, you
just
kind of just
slides over. It's kind of cool. I kind of
yeah.
like that, but yeah, I can see how it feels like a Walmart in there because everything's like white and polished.
Yeah, it's like just like a lot of just artificial lighting. I mean, there's yeah, I mean it's kind of cool. It was kind of fun to walk around. They have a bobblehead museum, and they it was really funny. I talked about in the Lone Depot Park review that like they don't have a Marlins museum, but what are you really celebrating? I was like, and this is when we traded, Miguel Cabrera for a couple napkins, and this is where we traded John Carlos Stanton for a literal abuser. Um, but then they actually opened a Marlins museum right after that video came out. So a lot of people are like, oh, they do have a museum. It's like, yeah, it wasn't there when I was there. Anyway, and then
Unlike other expansion
last,
teams, at least they do have some World Series rings. So
yeah,
you got to give it to them.
two really uncanny. Like, I mean, they were the. I mean, if you slice out a very specific portion from like 1996 to 2004,
Yeah.
they were the second most successful team behind the Yankees. I mean, think about it.
If you told me that, like I would not have believed that. That's wild.
Depending, if we're just counting rings, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
they
true.
technically in the 90s and 2000s. I guess only the Red Sox had two World Series wins, unless there's a team that I'm forgetting.
Giants?
Obviously, the Yankees. Giants didn't win their next World Series until 2010. So it's like
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
so 90s,
I thought you were thinking
2000s.
until now.
No,
But
no,
yeah.
no. So for 1990 to 2009, so 90s and
Yeah, the
2000s,
Red Sox
I think
won in
the
'04 and '07.
Yankees and then Marlins. Unless there's like one team that I'm like just blanking on. That's insane to
Yeah.
think about.
That's
Uh,
crazy.
that's like a Jay Cuda graphic.
Oh, yeah, he's so funny.
Like how many have you won more than two World Series in the 90s and 2000s? And it's just the Red Sox, Yankees, and Marlins. Man, there's gonna be a team that we completely blanked on, and we're gonna look like idiots. But
He should
I'm
take
gonna
that
I'm gonna take
idea.
that one to the bank. Yeah, I'm gonna take that one to the bank. Um, and then last but not least was Fenway Park. Actually, like I said, my family's from New England, and we actually have like ties to the Red Sox. I'm not gonna say who, but like some fairly big names within the Red Sox broadcasting community have family and stuff like that. So I was actually able to go inside the Green Monster,
Sick.
and that was one of the coolest experiences ever. Because basically, every player, I don't know if they still do this, but every player who plays at Fenway, they sign their name in the Green Monster. So the guy was like, there's Carlton Fisk's signature, there's Ted Williams' signature, Like all the, I mean, like you want to talk about feeling the history
Wow.
of where you're standing. You know, you're literally surrounded by all these signatures of like the greatest players ever. So that was really cool. Just being able to like walk on the field too. Actually, it was really funny. The Rockies were warming up, and it was 2007, so we ended up accidentally seeing the World Series preview that year. Tim Wakefield was starting. Rest in
Wow,
peace.
that's actually crazy. Yeah. Rockies
Yeah,
versus Red Sox. That's a matchup you would not have thought of.
it was a weird. That was in the matchup. We definitely wouldn't thought it would have happened when we saw them in June. I think the Rockies were actually like under 500 at that point. Before Rocktober happened, and I think that's it. Unless there's like one stadium that I saw that was just so unspectacular. I mean, I've driven past a bunch
Yeah,
while
me
on
too.
tour. I saw Minute Maid Park. I saw Tropicana, but um, that was it. I think my favorite out of all of them might be Wrigley. That was just such a cool experience. And then probably my least favorite, not counting Dodger Stadium and Angel Stadium because I was like too young. Probably Lone Depot, unfortunately, which I feel so bad saying, but
Yeah, I'd say
you know,
for me, I Camden Yards was so impressive. I think if if teams are looking to build a new stadium, they should reference Camden
oh yeah.
Yards for
Well,
sure.
Truist Field literally got its design from Camden. It's the retro modern ballpark. There's an actual specific name for it.
It's like the
That was
Neo.
coined
It's not like a Neo Jewel box, but it's like taking from like those eras, which I love.
because
The
basically,
Jewel box or whatever you call them, those
mhm,
parks are so like interesting to look at. I
yeah.
think.
Because in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, every team had the uh, cookie cutter
Oh yeah.
stadium, which were these multi-purpose, surrounded by a parking lot. Like they weren't really integrated into the city at all. And Camden changed that by I mean, it's right. I believe it's right, like in downtown Baltimore, near downtown Baltimore. Like it's
Yeah, no,
um,
it's right there, and um, I mean, I love architecture. It's like one of my main things. I mean, I play Minecraft.
hell yeah,
I
hell
built
yeah,
tons of baseball stadiums and basketball and
hell
football
yeah.
stadiums, and it's it's more fun to build when there's more oddities compared to the cookie cutter when it's just a giant circle, a giant dome. And there was a time and place for that because when you look at history, it is when um, like suburban expansion and the rise of cars were
Yeah,
happening. I mean,
Reagan era.
it was bound to happen. There were going to be stadiums that were going to exit the downtown area, but bringing them back into the cities is just so good for not just baseball, but also for like city planning and design
Culture.
and culture.
Yeah,
So like the cultures of
and
the city.
that's something I'm so fascinated about. And I'm trying to explore it more with my channel about why we love sports so much and why we feel so passionately about our teams. And part of that is stems from identity, stems from uh, feeling city pride wherever you go. For me, even though my city has a lot of flaws, I feel proud to be from Atlanta and or to have grown up around Atlanta, and as I'm saying that, I'm like mispronouncing the hell out of it too. So, people can roast me in the comments, but um, just it's same thing. When you have an artist that comes from your city, and when your sports team is doing well, it's part of your identity, and it's like you feel like that their successes are your successes. So it's like not. I mean, assuming maybe other teams have this too, and I just don't pay enough attention. But there is something special about uh, having a player play for your team who also grew up a fan of your team. Austin Riley is from Mississippi. He was grew up around like Memphis and Jackson. He grew up in Braves country. Kyle Wright. We actually had a whole bobblehead giveaway where we had each player who's from like a different state in Braves country have a bobblehead where it's like them on top of the state, and then you could actually like piece them together. So it was like
Oh,
Matt
that's cool.
Olson. Yeah, it was actually Matt Olson, Georgia, AJ Minter, I believe, Tennessee, Kyle Wright, Alabama, and then Austin Riley. Mississippi, and if you got all four, you could just put the states together and have them. I think my girlfriend actually has them all. I'm trying to convince her to, she has them like still in the box because I think she wants to, keep them
You gotta
fresh
keep that value up.
yeah. Actually, I have like the Outcast bobblehead, and I'm a hypocrite because I literally have it like in the box right now. I just don't know where to put it.
All right, I think it's a good time to move on. We're about, I think, like an hour and a half into it, which is crazy. I just feel like we just started. But do you have any predictions for the 2024 season?
Oh man, I love predicting.
It's fun to
I'm
do.
not always good at it. I think for every good prediction I made last year, I had one awful one. One of my good predictions was I thought the Diamondbacks were going to be the sixth wild card team. Just not going to brag about that one, but I also thought the White Sox were
Slight
going to win
flex.
the AL Central. So, okay, predictions for the 2024 season. I'm gonna try to do. I'm gonna do like a team that nobody's expecting to make the playoffs. I'm gonna do a player who's gonna be a breakout, and then I'll do like a pitcher who I think is gonna be a breakout. So, team who I think is gonna be a surprise to make the playoffs next year. I'm gonna say Cubs. I don't know if they're like necessarily a surprise, but I think a lot of people are gonna expect them to regress when they already weren't a playoff team. But I think they're going to be really aggressive this winter. They have a lot of like really intriguing prospects and players. Nico Horner, man, if he's not on your radar, he should be. He's kind of reminds me a little bit of like Ben Zobrist, where he can play all over the field. He is just secretly like a five-WAR player, and it's like you won't really appreciate him unless you're a Cubs fan. So really excited to see him play in the World Series next year. Breakout pick. Let's see. I'm going team to team, and this is off the cuff too. I mean, this is just sort of not really having done any research on this, so I'm gonna try to keep it close to home. So let's keep it in the East, and I'm gonna go with just I'm going through teams. How about let's trade off so I can think for a second.
Okay.
What team do you think is going to surprise a lot of people next year?
Okay, so I'm gonna try to be unbiased with this. I'm gonna try my best to be unbiased. Um, so I guess who do I think is gonna be in the World Series next year? Because I could just say the Yankees, but I don't want to do that because I don't want to like jinx it. But I think who has the best chances? This is tough. This is very tough.
It is tough,
Um,
and it's like it's so funny. It's like you have this season, 162 game
yeah,
season, where it does determine. I think in a 162 game season, like the cream rises to the top, like the most deserving teams get the higher playoff seeds. But then once you do it, it's just like a game of plinko. Like you literally just throw the chip in, and it's just chance,
yeah,
pretty much.
and
Like we were
also
talking about
yeah,
earlier.
another thing with baseball, we haven't had a repeat champion in over 20 years since the
It's the
Yankees,
Yankees, yeah.
which is another thing which is interesting. So yeah, it's really hard to say like, oh, I think this team's gonna repeat because it most likely isn't gonna happen. But I do
The
think
Rangers are so dangerous, though.
they are so dangerous. We might have a year where the Rangers go back. I think the Rangers will go back, but I think it's going to be the Phillies' year. So I'm sorry to
Mm.
say that. I know,
Yeah, just remember who you're talking
but
to, but I get it. I get it.
I think that's a really good pick coming from like right now. Um, their team is gross.
I think coming into next year, they're going to have their ducks in a row. You think about 2022, they got off to that awful start. They fired Joe Girardi. They were pretty much just all out of sorts, and then everything clicked. This year, Bryce Harper was injured. I mean, he came back in May, but wasn't really fully himself until really August and September, and then that's when they because he was DHing for most of the year, they had to play Castellanos and Schwarber in the field. They didn't really have a great outfield alignment. I think it pains me to say this. I really don't like advocating for the Phillies here, but I think going into next year, they're just going to be a complete team from the start,
Yeah,
and that's scary.
clip that. Clip that. All right,
just
yeah.
just be like, no more fielders, the biggest Philly shill ever. Um, how about
Who do
how
you
about I
think's?
double
Do you
down
have a like an MVP pick, like a super early MVP pick
for the NL? I mean,
or
I'm
picks?
just gonna be a shill and say Ronald Acuna Jr. I just let me just because I talked about the Phillies in such reverence, I feel like I have to make up for it by talking about one of my favorite players. Um, Ronald Acuna Jr. Watching him this year was one of the most special moments for me because as you get older, everything gets less, everything gets like demystified. Where there's never like really any like intrigue anymore. It's like you know everything. I mean, you don't know everything, but your imagination reaches almost like a capacity, a limit, and a lot of that goes for baseball too. Growing up, you watch all these players, and you're just like they're just like superstars, and they seem like larger than life.
They're like
And
superheroes.
exactly, and they do these things that you just as you get older, it's still impressive. I mean, it's always going to be impressive, but you've like I've already seen that. I've already this guy already did this thing, and there's players who come along every so often. But Ronald Acuna Jr. is a player who makes me feel like a kid watching the game again, and what he was able to do on the field in 2023, just like the flair for the dramatic. Even I know a lot of people talk crap about his fielding metrics, and yeah, like he's not a great fielder anymore. He just his reaction times aren't great, but when you actually watch him, it's actually really fun, especially watching him go to a ball uh, at the warning track because you can still tell in the back of his mind that the injury from 2021 is still lingering, just mentally. He got it trying to catch a ball on the warning track off the bat at Jazz Chisholm. And so, but you see him being careful and you see him like able to make still a very impressive play, but uh, do it in a way where it's like, okay, I'm not going to destroy my knee again. But just being able to see what he did on a baseball field night after night, like it just made me feel like a kid again. It just re um, invigorated my imagination of like what's possible on a baseball field. And I'm so glad he was able to get to 40-70 this year. He hit freaking. I know batting average is a antiquated stat or whatever, but he hit like 330 this year while hitting 40 homers and stealing 70. Like
It's crazy.
what? Are you kidding me?
I still think
Holy
average.
shit!
I mean, baseball fans are gonna argue about this, but like, I still think average is probably the best stat to determine how good a hitter is, because
I think I, I think
if
the
you
way
get a
to
hit, I mean, hits are very, it determines. There's a lot of factors, but how many hits you get is it's so influential on how good of a baseball player you are.
yeah, the way I see it is like it the two stats that we do look at now that we're like serious about OBP and slugging. It feels both those stats. Like if you aren't getting on base a lot because you're not hitting the ball a lot, even if you're walking, like you're gonna have a lower OBP. Like look at Kyle Schwarber. If Kyle Schwarber just had connected on a few more balls and was able to raise the average to like 220, his OBP would be insane. And also obviously field slugging too. So that's the way I look at it. Like I do think there are better metrics than batting average
Hmm.
to determine like how good of a hitter you're. Because like look at Max Muncy. If you looked at his average, you'd think he was like an awful, awful hitter. But he gets on base a lot through walks, and then when he does make contact, he slugs the ball. I mean, he's getting extra base hits, but average still fuels both those stats that we do know are important. So that's just kind of the way I look at it.
Cool. Yeah, I'm just
Who would
trying to
you
think.
say is your MVP pick, your early one for either
My
league?
MVP preseason, like preseason MVP. Um,
This is the part
it's
where we just
such.
both shill for our right fielder.
Yeah, yeah, Anthony Volpe for MVP. No. Although that would
Giancarlo
be.
Stanton.
Could you imagine if Giancarlo Stanton had like a 55 home run, 325 batting? Could you imagine like baseball? It would just
It
it would be broken.
it's so funny when the Giancarlo Stanton trade was made because there were people in the game
I
who were
was so
like,
psyched. I was so hyped to see Giancarlo Stanton get
But there were
all star appearances for the next 10 years. But I mean,
yeah, and there were people in
he's
the
had one.
game who were like, "This is unfair." Like they took advantage of the Marlins. They bullied them with their money, and now looking back at it, we're like, "Oh no!" Like I mean, it was almost. It's gonna sound really bad because it's not like Stanton. He had a good year in 2018. He had a good year in 2021, but it almost feels kind of like a lose trade in a way. Um, unless you're like, well, the Marlins were able to take a lot of Stan's contract off their books, so but I mean, none of the prospects the Marlins got panned out,
I like to
and
see the
then
effects, like the long term effects of Stanton being traded. That would be interesting to
like
see. And also, when Stanton is hot, he is lights out. Like there was a couple of weeks
yeah,
last year, even though he had a horrible season, there where you thought he was gonna like this is his comeback, this is his time, he is back, but then he
he's
just
still
falls
he's
off.
still the exit velo king.
He
I
is.
remember they used to have the Chapman filter. They rolled his Chapman filter for like highest pitching, like fastball velocities, where it's like just he appeared on it so many times that you could filter him out to see like literally anybody else. It's like the same thing for Stanton. It's like every year, even this year, I would say he had. I don't know this for a fact, but I would guess he had 5 of the 10 highest exit velos.
Yeah, if
It's
you're
just
sitting out in left field, I would wear a helmet when Stanton comes
yeah,
up because he might kill
I would
someone.
wear-
Like one of these times, he might
yeah.
kill someone.
I would wear like full body padding, even right
Yeah.
field too. I mean, he can go the other way.
True.
He can
Yeah.
knock it all over the field. It's just even I remember the Brave series, man. Like is just when his timing. It's so weird too because he has such a fundamentally solid swing. It's not like Cody Bellinger's where
I love the close
um
stance. It's so yeah.
oh it's so badass. It's especially badass too because he actually had a facial fracture back in 2014 2015. Mike Fires, the guy who
Yeah, you
actually
got yeah.
was the
Yep.
um basically, I mean, just I mean, 90 something mile per hour fastball like right in the chin. I mean, ended his season. So for him to go to the close stance in 2017 after that happened, like that, oh man, dude, like I mean, I wouldn't obviously pick a fight with a Major League Baseball player ever, but if there's one you especially shouldn't pick a fight with, it's Stanton. Like he would actually send you to the hospital, possibly the morgue.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, I think that's it's been a great show. I've really had a great time talking to you. No more fielders,
Hell
and
yeah.
I hope the audience also enjoyed. It's been about like
Think
2 hours, which I did
two
not think
hours.
we were gonna
So
go that long. So
a lot of
it's been awesome.
content. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Would love to be back, and I know you have a couple more shows today behind the scenes, so good
Oh
luck
yeah,
with those. And
thank you.
yeah, looking forward to talking to you soon.
Yeah, I hopefully we can get this episode out pretty shortly, or not shortly. It's gonna be a few weeks because this is not the first episode. For people that are listening, this is the first episode that I'm recording, but it's gonna be the third I'm releasing because I have a bunch lined up. But yeah, once again, thank you for coming on. It's been great. It's been a great time. And yeah, for sure, I'll have to get you back on because this is really fun. I love this format, and looking forward to seeing the audience's responses. So yeah, if you did enjoy,
Awesome.
shout out to your podcast, Braves Cast. If you want to give a shout out to your friend that you do that with.
Yeah, shout out Mitchell Barbie. He does articles at House the Hank Build. He also has a YouTube channel, What Happened to Baseball. By the time this comes out, he will probably have released a video about actually Hal Steinbrenner,
Oh,
former
cool.
Yankees owner, or
Awesome.
not Hank
Or,
Steinbrenner,
or
whatever
yeah,
the
yeah,
older,
yeah.
whoever the
George.
older one, is.
George.
George Steinbrenner, the angry one.
He was the
Um,
greatest. He was the best.
by the time
The
this
boss.
podcast comes out, probably would have released my White Sox video. Please check that out. It is going to be ugly.
Oh yeah. So yeah, if you have not already subscribed to No More Fielders, I mean you don't need my shout out. You're way bigger than me, but please go subscribe. He has some great content, some of my favorite videos on YouTube, and I think he has some great stuff coming in the future. So yeah, thank you for coming on, and I'll see you guys next time.
Peace.